Ooh, dead air. That's not good. Welcome via session 124. When you hit rock bottom, the only way to go is up. That's it.
This right here has the ability with a 30 caliber clip to disperse with 30 bullets within half a second.
Just when I think you couldn't possibly be any dumber.
You're listening to your weekly dose of BS, Ballistically Speaking. The Ballistically Speaking Podcast.
Well, I had entirely planned at this moment on saying, so anything interesting happened this week, guys? I'm kind of out of the loop, but then Van said it off the air, and now I just feel like I'm copying Van. So I'm not going to say it. So anything happening, guys?
Yeah. Where could we possibly go with this? I
found a tick in my
tell
house.
you,
That was exciting.
That is amazing to me. Thanks for the deflection. That is amazing to me that the ticks are out this early. That never happens. What the fuck? Global warming, I guess, is a real thing.
And there goes Rooster ruining our monetization, saying the F word within a minute and 30 seconds.
Geisa. I should have said it in German.
If you say it in German, it still counts. The algorithm is multilingual. It's a polyglot algorithm.
AI knows German.
It translated that poorly.
Did he say it properly then, Van? Do you actually speak German?
I don't know. No.
Oh, I was about to be so disappointed that you've never spoke German in front of us before.
No.
Scheiße.
No, I know a couple of things, and they're all bad.
They're all bad.
It's the first thing you learn when you learn a foreign language, or at least when you get together with someone that knows a foreign language.
Exactly.
The first thing you learn is a whole bunch of swear words and how to offend women.
Yeah, but like what kind of bad things are you learning in German though? You're like learning how to say communal shower, get on the train. Too soon? It's been 80 years, guys.
Too soon. You know what? I spent a lot of time with Mennonites years and years ago, 30 years ago, when I played ball out in Winnipeg and played with a bunch of Mennonites. And it's Low German, so it's kind of a Russian dialect, right? And I wanted to learn some stuff, and of course, I learned some really, really useful stuff, like show me your tits and nice ass and all that kind of stuff.
What is going on?
I don't know.
We haven't even gotten on.
You started this.
Did I start this?
You know what? That's what I'm gonna say. That's what I'm gonna stick with.
Out of my way.
I warned you guys. I pre-drunk for this podcast.
I did. Drank, not drunk.
I told
pre-drank.
Pre-drunk.
Yeah. Past tense of drink is drank.
Well, I am not pre-drunk. I did pre-drank. Drank. No. Shit. Fuck.
Okay. So
still inside 5 minutes, isn't it?
It is 3 minutes 43 seconds. Let's pay some bills before all of our sponsors decide to drop us like a bad habit.
Let's do that. Yeah.
Daniel will be the only one left because he's guilty by association.
It's like, why am I associated with these guys at all? And I'll tell you one thing: call sign 66 will still be with us, because they're Canada's best rifle training.
I agree.
Welcome to the Brotherhood. Book a course now at callsign66.ca. And follow them on Instagram at callsign66 and on Facebook at, you guessed it, callsign66.
Is it, or is it C/S66?
Well, you know what? I'm hopeful that people are intelligent to try at least a couple of things to get there. If
that is the topic of this entire conversation about how unintelligent the people are.
You're going to get a lot of Counter-Strike players want to take rifle training.
Right.
All
right.
Right, Mike,
liberals want to be there. Yeah.
And we are all brought to you by Ribstone Gunsmithing. Craftsmanship done right. Contact Oscar at ribstonegunsmithing.ca and breathe life back into any firearm. Also, Oscar has a new book out titled Rust Bluing in the 21st Century, and you can find that on Amazon.
Find it on Amazon. Also brought to you by March Scopes Canada. The Dion Optical Design line of rifle scopes has a scope for all of your hunting and shooting needs. Find Doug and Niza at marchscopes.ca.
You know, Mike, I have to say that that silky voice is kind of arousing, to be honest. It's just, there's
Who
something
invited-
about it. It's like
Who invited Kurt
like
on the show?
late 70s, early 80s porn kind of the intro guy, you know, like.
Are you
Anyway,
saying that he's Ron Jeremy?
Maybe with that mustache.
I set it up and Vanya dunked it down.
Do you want to
All
know
right.
the real origin story, or should we get through the sponsors? I'll tell you the origin story of that voice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hold on to that thought. All right. Apex Optics. When you buy Apex, precision comes standard. Check out all the fine competition rifle scopes, red dots, and binoculars at apexoptics.co. And just a quick note, Apex is tariff proof. Are we still tariff proof?
Yep.
Yeah. Excellent. Canadian and international orders shipped direct from the Calgary warehouse, and American orders shipped from the great state of Texas. No tariffs, no hassle. Yes, folks, it's that easy.
There you go.
That wasn't velvet.
No,
That was-
certainly not.
That was if you put velvet through a wood chipper.
It's super creepy.
I liked it.
you got Vanya hooked.
I'm good.
Now Vanya's moist.
But now is that because of the voice, or is that because he was doing an Apex Optics read?
I don't think we should
Hard to
discuss it.
say.
to be
Yeah.
honest. Yeah.
Could go either way. Okay, Mike, you're up.
We're also brought to you by EM Precision Rifles in Vegreville, Alberta. Building Canada's finest precision rifles. Find Shane and Steve on Facebook, Instagram, and on their website at emprifles.ca.
Where'd the voice go?
Oh, I made him shy.
Yeah. Well, that's
When you
okay.
use the
We're
word
also
aroused, I need to dial it back.
Bring Ron back.
we are also brought to you by Bolt Action Coffee, bringing specialty coffee to the precision shooting world. Order coffee and merchandise at boltactioncoffee.com.
And it seems I'm getting all the long reads when I can't read at all. Odell Engineering, pick up a Connect shotgun, Brigade rifle, and Apex ammunition from your local distributor and tell them Phil sent you. Look them up on Instagram, Flakebook, and on their website at odellengineeringltd.com. Just a quick note, another quick note, same as the last quick note that I gave a little while ago. They had to start a new Facebook page, so make sure you head over and give them a follow on the new Facebook page. Just a
It
quick
was
note.
not just it was not a Chinese bot making the page.
No, the
I
comments
still
were
think that's hilarious.
so entertaining. Absolutely.
Did you see
Stay
that, Van?
tuned.
No.
So
Oh.
Odell Engineering had to make a new Facebook page, and so to
How
let
many gold?
everybody know, one of the things that they did is they posted the link to their new page on the CCFR Facebook page, saying that we had to create a new page. This is our new page. Go like our page. And it was well over 100 comments. It's like possibly even like 200 comments about how this is a Chinese bot. It's a scam.
Bot.
Don't do it. RCMP. It's just like,
Cool. That's
like
going to lead up to the election, I think.
yeah. This is before
Yeah.
the election. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was pretty funny. Sorry, finish your read there, Rooster.
All right. The Canuck Wrangler is supposed to be coming out soon. I think we're there, aren't we?
I got one right here.
You got a couple right there, don't you?
Well, no, I get Derek got one and I got one.
I see. The old switcheroo. Friday the 13th switcheroo.
No, we're not there yet.
No.
Are you talking about the movie with Lindsay Lohan and what's her name, the original Scream Queen?
That's
There
13
was one in
going
the
on 30
60s.
or
Oh.
something like that.
Oh, no, you know exactly what it is. Don't pretend you didn't know the title.
Yes, I watch it right after Beaches.
Freaky Friday with Jamie Lee Curtis and Lindsay Lohan.
That's
That's
It
the
wasn't
one.
Freaky Friday. Was it Freaky Friday? Well, what was 13 going on 30 then?
that
Oh,
was
no.
with
Jennifer Garner?
Jennifer
Garner, yeah.
Garner. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Same
So
shit.
anyway,
Anyways, I got
Now
one
that
more.
we've
ad.
established that all of us
Glad we
watch
worked
teen
through
flicks,
that.
girl flicks.
We got one more. I want to finish.
Oh, yeah. Yes, do it. Okay.
We're
Wait, it's
also
my
brought
turn.
to you
No, it's your
by.
turn.
Yeah, it's my turn. We're also brought to you by Sterling Arms International, home of the R18 Mark III and the R9. Contact them at sterlingarms.com. Look out for the R9 arriving at a store near you. Act now as they are going fast. Little Bird told us the restock will be hitting store shelves, so watch for that at your local retailers. How was
This is
that?
the Jeremy we know and
Okay, now
love.
tell us your Ron Jeremy origin story quickly.
Oh, it's not that exciting. On Sirius XM, when I was working up north, they had a station called Radio Classics. So it's like the radio plays from the 1930s and 40s and stuff.
Yeah.
So they'd be just talking randomly, and then we're like, I want to have some coffee. Folgers, the number one coffee for my morning cup of Joe. Like how they just seamlessly insert the ads. So
Yeah.
I'd spent like hours listening to them.
but there was also like a different broadcast tone and voice and how they said things back then too, right?
Oh yeah.
Well, it was the
like
inflection,
40s,
and there was
50s?
there was the quality of the microphones, and it was the like how people did their voice, or the inflection, I guess you'd call it.
Yeah.
Like you think back to the
So-
JFK speeches and stuff like that. Like just that way of speaking was so common back in the 60s and 50s and all that kind of stuff. It's kind of neat. And I've thought about this lots, like how that has changed so much. And it's
Did you know JFK was on
Interesting.
meth like half of his presidency?
who cares?
He was on amphetamine. And if you don't believe me, you can look up Dr. Max Jacobson. He was giving all kinds of interesting drug cocktails to all the stars back in the day.
I don't know.
Like when Marilyn Monroe sang "Happy Birthday, Mr.
Right.
President," she was honked out of her mind.
Oh yeah.
That checks out.
He probably doesn't remember that.
I'm full of useless information.
I'm gonna keep us
Cliffy.
derailed for one more moment here. Carly said that Freaky Friday 2 is coming out now, filming, and my first question is: are they just
Oh my God, I
reversing
can't
roles in
wait.
this one? Is Lindsay Lohan going to play the older one, and Jamie Lee Curtis is going to play the younger one? Because Lindsay Lohan looks significantly older than Jamie Lee Curtis these days.
Show of hands who's seen enough of Lindsay Lohan. No?
25%. 25%, Kurt. He's so
I'm
funny.
waiting for a
He
redemption arc.
totally thought that we were all going to be with him.
Wow.
AI is a wonderful
That's,
thing.
You guys
I thought it was a trap.
It probably
Trick
was.
question.
He's just disappointed you didn't take the bait. Here's a question: are we just delaying the inevitable?
Yeah, I think we're just
I think
delaying
we
the
might be.
sadness.
We
Yeah.
might be.
Where do we start? There was an election last week.
Monday.
Yeah, I guess it was this
Yeah.
week, wasn't it? Jeez,
Yeah.
feels like so
Goodness.
long ago. There was an election on Monday. So what happened? I wasn't paying attention.
Oh, just wait. You're kidding, right?
No, not good. Well,
Not good.
good and not good.
Did Jagmeet not get his seat?
He did not win his seat.
I was pulling for him so hard. Wait, that
I know
doesn't
you
sound,
were.
I don't
So
think that's how you
hard.
say that.
So hard.
He
Okay.
lost his seat, but he got his pension.
Oh, thank God. I was worried about him and his financial future there for a little while.
Yeah, that Maserati's
Yeah,
not going to
yeah.
pay for itself. So
Well, now
how many
yeah.
more
Do you think that
Rolexes
pension
can he
really
afford on
comes
it?
into it?
no, I don't think so. I think
I don't
honestly,
think so.
it came down to a strategic alliance between. I mean, he was so far up their ass that he had no way to uncouple his political future from theirs. I would say from Justin Trudeau's.
He had no political future for the last couple of years, to be
No.
honest.
Exactly.
The alliances that he made and the stupid shit that continually came out of his mouth, he had to know that only the stupidest of Canadians would follow him. So he really had not a hell of a lot to lose, in my opinion.
Is that your silver
You know what?
lining for the
And I've
election, that only 6% of Canadian voters are stupid?
no,
Oh,
I'm not
okay.
saying that explicitly.
Oh, okay.
He's implying it.
Um,
I'm finding it hard to find a silver lining in this election.
I found a few, but I don't want to jump the gun and get to them right now.
okay,
I'd
so
like to cry a little longer before I talk about the silver linings, but I think I did find a few. Well, one.
I have so much to say, but I have trouble figuring out how I'm going to keep this measured. I have talked to
First of all, take your hand off
as
your mouth. Did nobody train you how to speak on television?
I'm doing this, trying to direct my voice, project my voice into the
How are they
microphone.
going to get? How are the YouTube watchers going to get the auto captions if your hand is in front of your mouth?
Well, I don't want anybody reading my lips to misinterpret what I've said. You know,
Okay.
Ceases is watching and all that kind of stuff. So,
Okay.
no, you know what? I actually made an effort to watch left-wing podcasts, political commentators talk to people who were firmly in that left-wing camp
hmm
to try to get some perspective. And I there's enough I don't know what you call it, perspective or doubt or second guessing of myself or whatever to think that, you know what, maybe I'm missing something.
Okay.
Maybe I'm not considering some perspectives, because largely you think about it, we're in everybody, or almost everybody, I think, parks themselves in a camp and welcomes you know, the warm blanket of of a a that that um what do I want to say, Chris, help me out, that bubble
If I knew, I'd
that
tell you.
say again.
Oh, yeah, I get what you're saying. That you're talking about people like
Okay.
the comfortability of being in their comfort zone.
Well,
Their own
right.
their own little bubble universe.
Well,
You know,
you're
people
being
that
reassured
agree
that what you
with,
believe is correct, right? When somebody says the exact same thing as you,
sure,
and it's a confirmation bias, right? But
Mhm.
that's
at
right.
the end of the
That's
day,
right.
everybody enjoys that. I mean, we all can talk in a circle jerk all we want about all the things, and we're all going to agree on like 98% of it. It's going to feel good, really good talking about it, but at the same time, it's not going to change any votes out there.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%.
That's very true. That's very true. And
I feel like a
we
dick
all tend to
agreeing with what
talk
you said
within
now.
our circle.
Sorry.
So, okay, carry
Well,
on with
I
your
think
thought.
what you're saying, like Rooster, what you're talking about is, it's. I think the thing I'm keying in on is that it's really important to watch what the other side is talking about and what's important to them, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things that, you know, Carly and I have both, like, we've both been plugged in politically for the last like 25 years or more than that. And we watch both sides of the aisle. We see what they're talking about. What are the issues that they're keying in on their voters? What are they talking about in their news shows and the talk shows and the podcasts and the articles that are being written by the left leaning, the center leaning, and the right leaning? We try to get a pretty good picture. Now, over the last couple of years, I found it increasingly difficult to read a lot of that stuff just because it became so, I feel like, rooted in, I don't know, fantasy, an alternate worldview that I didn't really agree with. And so maybe I'm falling into the trap of like really just like starting to now finally like going the other way. And now I'm starting to like just not read any of that stuff anymore. So I'm catching myself just kind of like actively ignoring it.
You're actively ignoring the left-wing stuff?
Yeah. I found myself over the last like couple of years just really like, one, we've been really slammed and busy for the last like 5 years. And obviously with small kids, the business, all the travel and all the craziness that is our lives. So, you know, a lot of the stuff that gets fed up to me is, you know, a lot of the siloed bias kind of feeding mechanism of the algorithm. But I still actively try to watch a lot of stuff. And then I find it really difficult to engage with people when something they say is so patently false and untrue. And I go, how could you possibly believe that? Like, there's no way. Like, if you just did like 5 seconds of just Googling, you would see that this is not even remotely true. And I'm not talking like World Economic Forum, like none of that stuff. I'm just talking like basics.
100%.
Yeah.
Facts.
Yes.
Like things that are just like factually backed up by StatsCan data, right?
Yeah.
If you put out an ounce of fucking effort, you would see an argument against what you're espousing.
Exactly.
And I think that is the problem, that people want to latch on to something that some herd has already trumpeted about. And
Mhm.
I want to join that herd. They're loud, they're fucking crazy, they're getting away with shitty behavior. I want to be a part of that.
And
Honest to
you
God.
feel there's a big,
I-
I mean, obviously there's a big, I think, thing missing in people's lives where they have to feel like they belong to something, right? With that, now historically that's been
Yes.
church, that's been community, that's been whatever, and we all find our own communities for that. But you know, I have a family friend of ours who's, I don't know, I'm not going to name names, but honestly, for lack of a better
It's not
term,
necessary.
you know, a very, very entitled kid who had a lot of privileges growing up, white kid in Calgary, in a very
Sure.
well-off family, private schools his entire life pretty much.
That is
but-
the fucking breeding ground for this kind of shit, man.
But his dad made his money in the energy sector, okay, in Calgary.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well,
This
that's a
guy,
conflict.
Yep.
we were at a dinner, this was last fall, at his family's house, and he happened to be there because, of course, he's 40 years old and lives at home, doesn't work. But the big thing for him was we spent, like, Carly and I were almost like fighting with him verbally and arguing because he was going to do whatever he took to vote out Daniel Smith and to make sure that the Liberals get reelected or the NDP or whatever, and like hammering us on the stuff. We're like, you do understand that all these things are anti-business, anti-enterprise. If the things that you are doing or espousing come into play in your dad's time, he never would have had the ability to make his money and be successful in his enterprise, and thus you would be out on your ass in the middle of the street. Like, it just,
So how does-
those
how
things
does
don't
he
connect in a lot of people's heads.
There's no reconciliation there, like with that
No.
person.
No.
It
That's
doesn't have to be anymore. That's the problem.
Yeah,
We've
I've been
become
thinking-
a nation of words. Words mean more than anything now. It seems like actions, not so much. That and this is the problem.
I
Words
don't
hurt.
think even I don't think words mean
Words.
anything either, Kurt. I think
but
I think
listen
groupthink
to the
is what
people on the
matters.
other side of the fence. And
Popularity
they
is what
will-
matters.
Well, that, I think
with words.
there's an attitude of I know better than you, so
Yeah,
that's a problem, right? And I think especially
I've been thinking
for-
about that the last couple of days really hard, and
Yeah.
for some reason I keep coming back to the Dunning-Kruger effect, and this kind of, and not like the typical like I'm gonna call you like an idiot in the smartest way that I can think to call you an idiot.
Of course.
I mean, like
and that started
the
from the left,
actual,
well, in the right with those
100%.
words, Dunning-Kruger, right?
100%.
And all that stuff.
yeah.
It's
But when
ignorant.
I say it though, I mean the
dictionary-
actual like theory of
Yes.
the Dunning-Kruger effect. And so I was talking with one of my friends, who is he used to call himself a small C conservative. I mean, we don't really talk in terms like that anymore, but he's a fiscal
Fuck off
conservative
already.
and not
Yeah.
necessarily
Yeah,
a social
yeah.
conservative.
Yeah.
But he's voted conservative for most of his adult life. He's what is he? He's in his late 50s now. And he's got a son who is now in engineering school, university, and has been for about the last 3 years. And so his son, I think he's got to be what, 22, 23 years old now at this point. And both of them are, I would consider, highly intelligent people, like probably above average in terms of IQ quotient. But his son has just completely fallen into the typical university indoctrination. And the crazy things that this kid comes up with, and a kid who is otherwise quite intelligent, he's probably going to be a very successful engineer when he gets out of school.
Mm-hmm.
But in all other things is highly intelligent. when it comes
because they
to
make shit that doesn't make sense that the rest of us have to deal with.
well, fair point. But in terms of politics, he's been told for the last however many years with such certainty and confidence the woke agenda that he, and this is where I tie this back to the Dunning-Kruger effect, that it's been said with such confidence that it has to be now.
Yes.
And he's when it comes to social issues and politics especially, he has become so ignorant that he doesn't even know how ignorant he is. And he makes these statements and you look at him like, what? Like, how can such an intelligent kid, he's not even a kid anymore, say such a monumentally stupid thing that just requires a modicum of intelligent and critical thought to work through?
So going back to kind of defend my statement earlier, and I know it sounds funny, but it's words. It's words that got him there. It's speech. It's ideas. It is not action.
Well, I think
do you
it's
know
actually,
what I'm saying? You're
I
speaking
actually,
the same language.
Yeah, we might be arguing semantics a little bit, but I actually disagree with you a little bit on that. I think it's more like what Vanya was saying, because what Vanya was touching on is more like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like the need for social belonging. It's the third rung on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's the first psychological need after the basic needs have been met. And I think that it has a lot more to do 100%. With that. You know, that's a very strong and deep-seated psychological need in people. And I think this isn't the first generation to be indoctrinated at a university, because like what happens there, right? And I think the same thing happens with all of us. You know, you hang out with a bunch of farmers your whole life, you're probably going to grow up, well, either old school socialist or conservative. You know what I mean?
Product of your environment.
You know, we live in a world where you see the people that you go to school with and or work with more than you see your own family, with the exception of the people who are highly intelligent, such as Vanya, Carly, myself, and my wife, who all work together. You're welcome. But
I'll just keep digging the ditches here. No problem.
Okay. Exactly. But I that's why I say, like, when you're talking like it's that words matter more now, I don't think it is. I think it's that people have I think too many needs have been met on Maslow's need hierarchy, if that makes sense. Life is a little bit too good and a little bit too easy, and so people just unthinkingly fall into these psychological camps.
Okay. Well, I mean, are we going to talk about what actually caused this election to switch around so quickly?
That's actually, let's do that. That's a great time to talk about that. Do you want to start?
Can I just address one thing before we go ahead and do that? I'm totally in favor of going ahead and doing that.
Yes, I already told you your beard looks great.
Stop it. You're going to make me blush. I don't like blushing on air. You know this, Chris.
Okay, carry on.
Coincidentally, I had an amazing, completely random encounter with a 71-year-old lady yesterday. Wonderfully.
This is how a great story starts.
Stop it. Stop.
Dear Penthouse Forum, I never thought it would happen to me.
Just because you used the word encounter, right?
Yeah.
Rendezvous.
Hey, fair play. However, this is much deeper. 71-year-old lady, wonderfully intelligent, wonderfully articulate, former school teacher, very accomplished. I mean, if she was telling the truth about Nancy, calm down, God damn it. I don't want a fucking sandal in the back of the head here.
Okay, carry on.
She and I discussed Kohlberg's stages of moral development. And you know what? This resonated with me Are you guys familiar?
I'm not. Coburgs?
Okay. It is, let me see here, Kohlberg.
Kohlberg, yeah, okay. Lawrence
Stages of
Kohlberg.
moral development. Okay. So she made a point that most people in general society do not progress beyond stage 2. So
Which
the
is self-interest
stages and
orientation.
well, yes, largely.
Okay.
So the stages are: stage 1 is avoiding punishment. Okay, the threat of punishment
Yeah.
and the avoidance of. Okay, stage 2 is self-interest. Like, what is the herd doing? What? Or, sorry,
What's best for me?
what's in it for me? Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. The third stage is, according to what I'm looking at right now, it's described a little bit differently than than what I discussed with this lady yesterday. The good boy attitude, and what it is herd acceptance. Okay, what
Right.
is the herd doing? I want to be a part of the herd, part of the group, or whatever.
Conformity.
It doesn't matter. Sorry.
Conformity.
Yeah.
Yes, largely yes. The fourth stage, law and order, morality. Okay, there
Mm.
are rules and there are consequences. The fifth stage is social contract.
Hmm.
What is morally right, what is good for the group, ahead of my own needs. What is good for the group is good for the individual,
Hmm.
right? The sixth and final stage is principle. And the way this lady described it was more um spiritual, really, than necessarily parsed down to principle.
Okay.
But I think that's kind of her own take of it. But principle, it's how do I say, like, good for mankind. This is what humans need. There may be sacrifices, but they're justified. Um, uh, good for all, moral, human rights. Um,
The humanistic approach.
yeah, I guess so. So
Okay.
it goes into a lot of explanation here. Most, according to this lady, and I think I agree with most of it. Most don't progress past stage 3.
Self-interest. Oh, stage
Uh,
3. Okay.
Stage 3, interpersonal accord and conformity, meaning social expectations. For example, a teenager agrees to volunteer because friends view volunteering positively.
Mm.
So
Mm.
it
Yeah.
resonated
Okay.
with me a lot because stage 2 is self-interest orientation. Self-interest orientation. Okay. Personal benefit. For example, a child helps clean up toys because they expect a reward afterward. Now, you look at our voting population in Canada. What was the reason that they voted in the manner that they did?
Fear.
Orange man bad.
That is stage 1, Vanya. And
Mhm.
and you are exactly right. So what does that tell you? And this is advancing right down to the second last point of the list on the show notes that I put in. The psychology of the
You read the show
Canadian
notes?
voter.
Yeah.
You didn't even look at the show notes, so fuck you.
No, I didn't.
I'm gonna stop writing these if you don't read them.
2 out of 3 ain't
That's-
bad.
Right.
That's pretty interesting though, Kurt. First of all, worst Penthouse Forum letter ever. But second of all,
I'm sorry. You know what? She was a beautiful woman for 71 years old. She was gorgeous. Her personality.
now you're gonna catch a shoe in the back of the head.
I already told
But
her.
but this is interesting, who'd have thought that we'd get into these like psychological aspects so quickly? We're talking about Maslow's hierarchy,
Sorry.
Kohlberg's stages of moral development. I forget who it
Now we're
was,
going
but
to talk about
somebody was
stages of
talking about
grief
the
next, or
forward
what?
pivot strategy. yeah.
Yeah.
I'm still
yeah.
in the I'm
We could
I
get
don't know
into
what
my
stage
Psych
I'm in.
30 class
I'm-
on the 30 stages of sleep deprivation.
I'm sorry, guys. I've been thinking about this a lot.
It's an interesting idea, though. But here would be my first question about Kohlberg's stages of moral development:
Sure.
is an individual in all things firmly seated in one of those stages of development? I would guess probably not. You know
Not
what I
at all.
mean?
Not at all.
Yeah. Is it a spectrum? No, I'm serious, right?
I know where you're going with that. Yeah, no, I think it would probably be conditional.
Okay, there are how do I say, if I do this, would it put me in this category? If I selectively picked a part of one of those 6 stages, would that make
Mhm.
me part of that stage? I don't know. There's so much to consider. You might be able to touch on one of those stages, but most of us are probably firmly in one of those stages with an idea of what is the next in that upper hierarchy.
Yeah.
I don't know. And what that means to anybody, I guess, is anybody's interpretation. How that affects their lives, I suppose, depends on values and all that kind of stuff. But I think it has an important point of your I suppose your moral direction. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Do you think
if,
this
Yeah.
election
what
was
do you
about
hold
around
valuable?
morality? Do you think it was about morality?
It
I was
has
just
to
going
be.
to ask that.
It absolutely has to be in
How
some
so?
respect, Vanya.
But do you think the actual election, like the question before the electorate, was around morals or anything like that?
Like ballot question. What was the ballot question?
Yeah.
The ballot question, I think.
Okay, so
Go ahead.
Go ahead,
right.
then.
But what leads you to that point in time where you make the decision to mark an X on a ballot? Do you know what I'm
Is
saying?
that
Like,
always a moral? Yeah, I think what Vanny says is that always a moral decision? I could certainly see in certain circumstances it being a moral decision.
shouldn't it have to be?
Well,
Maybe
I
I'm
know
narrowing
why
my
we vote
thinking.
why we vote the way we do.
Yeah, go for
Personally
it.
speaking, it is driven by fear as
Yeah.
well. It's like, what are they going to do to
Yes.
us next?
Yeah.
It's like not
100%.
as firearms owner. That's like way down the list, right? It's like,
But it's part
how
of it.
much further are they going to wreck the country for my kids and for my business and
Yes.
our livelihood and this and that? What is next out of the 16 scandals that have happened in the last 10 years that nobody seems to give a shit about anymore?
Oh, fuck.
And all the different things and the billions of dollars wasted and the billions of dollars in that we were now in debt, and nobody seems to care about that. And the same people who are in power are still in power, and somehow changing the figurehead at the top now fixes everything. But
We're
like
gonna
those
change
are the
the front
thing.
page.
Yeah. It was the same campaign strategist, Jenny Byrne, that got Trudeau into power the first time, that got Carney into power. It was the Gerald Butts and not Jenny Byrne, sorry, Jerry Butts and the other one,
Katie Telford.
Katie Telford, thank you, Telford, and Jenny Byrne was on the conservative side. But I'm just and she's taking a lot of flack right now, actually. But it was the same crew, it was the same machine, it was the same leadership group. Carney was the guy that was the chief economic advisor for the last 10 freaking years. Nothing changes, yet there was one thing that changed in the psyche of Canadians.
Donald Trump.
This is what I cannot fucking figure out.
How do you mean?
I can't figure out maybe I'm narrowing my focus too much into the psychology of it all. That what is it? Fear of Trump. Jesus Christ. Honest to God, is that really a thing?
Oh yeah.
Yep.
It
100%.
absolutely is. I'm not saying that it's rational. Well, actually, I think it's rational too, but I don't think that. I think what's not rational is the conclusion that so many people came to about what to do about the fear of Trump.
Agreed.
But are we collectively that fucking stupid that we just
Answer,
digest
yes.
what's coming?
But
Mass
here's the
hysteria.
problem, Kurt. Here's the problem,
It's
Kurt.
easy.
I don't think it's
Ah.
just liberals and left-wing voters that are that stupid.
No, it's not. But there's a portion of the population that says, okay, you know what? This is a real thing, and this deserves more investigation.
Okay, so here's
And
I've
another
been
part of the population that says, you know what? I've seen all I need to see, and I've drawn my conclusion now. Fuck Trump.
here's
Well,
what
yeah,
I
go ahead,
go ahead,
Chris.
Vince. No,
No,
go
no,
ahead.
Well,
No,
there,
finish
there
your
were
thought first.
there were a bunch of things that happened concurrently, right? So
Yes.
we had Justin Trudeau announce his resignation in, was it December? November?
January.
It was right after Christmas, I thought.
Yeah. So I thought it was like right after Christmas. Yeah. So maybe late
Yeah.
December, early January. But that was coordinated with the NDP. That was with Jagmeet's blessing. He knew that they were going to take a shit kicking. He was going to sacrifice the NDP so that the Conservatives didn't get in. And that's why he delayed the election. Every opportunity where Pierre Poilievre was calling for an election to be held inside the last 8 months was denied. The NDP was not going to support it. The Bloc wasn't going to support it. The Bloc kept trying to see how they were going to get more and more seats, and they ended up losing like 12 or 13.
Yeah.
So ultimately, it was really good politicking on the Liberal side from a party perspective. They knew what was their number one greatest detractor that was causing their polls to tank. It was Justin Trudeau, and they walked him out.
Yep.
And then they inserted Carney. It wasn't really a leadership race. It wasn't ever even close. Chrystia Freeland was never going to win. He was always the number one guy. I remember them talking like 6 years ago about who was going to succeed Justin Trudeau as the leader of the Liberal Party in Canada, and Mark Carney's name was at the top.
Yeah.
So this was not.
I remember that at the time. I was thinking, who the fuck is Mark Carney? But I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I don't remember that.
Those two things.
Right.
So that happened. Then on top of that, I mean, he was his primary economic advisor on all economic policy, including banking and green energy and the green transition and all the other extreme shit that we've had for the last 10 years. So he's the guy that's in charge now. On top of that, we have Donald Trump winning a second term. Fairly, he's got a fairly good mandate from his population and his voter base.
Yeah.
And now he feels like he can go and fuck shit up across the world, and he does. Mm-hmm. That was the worst thing that could have ever happened for Canadian Conservatives in the history of the country.
Yeah.
I'm not saying negative about Trump. I'm just saying he's doing what he's going to do for his country. But the timing of that was probably the most horrendous thing that could have ever happened to us. Mm-hmm. Straight up.
Yeah.
Because all it did was united every single Canadian of every stripe, whether you're conservative or liberal or in between or somewhere in the middle or somewhere in freaking Antarctica. It doesn't matter. Everybody was like elbows up, all that fucking bullshit.
Oh my God.
but exactly. But the sentiment was there at the core. Even with myself, I was like, well, no, we're Canadian, man. Like at the end of the day, you're not going to tell us what to do. You're not going to invade us. And if you do, you're going to see in Afghanistan or some other freaking situation like that. That in my mind, I'm thinking like, well, that's not going to work out well for anybody. It would never happen. I know it won't happen, but most people don't know that. They keep feeding the fear. The news is talking about 51st state. We're not even talking Tariff War. The Tariff War has happened like 30 times in the last 50 years, right? Like we're not even talking about that. There's a softwood lumber beef dispute, something with milk or whatever every 2 years. So that's far
at least,
right?
Yeah.
But really, I think the straw that broke the camel's back was the 51st state governor of Canada comments, all that stuff. I think it hit a nerve in Canadians that was it was just so violently like thrashed that the only way that people be like, who's the guy that can number one go against Trump and defend Canadian honor? And they saw Pierre Poilievre as a result of 10 or a couple of years of the media painting him as Trump Jr. or Canada's Trump or Maple Trump or whatever the hell they're going to call him.
Yeah.
which was entirely false. He's nothing like Donald Trump.
Incredibly
No,
misguided.
Yeah,
Yeah.
extremely extremely bad comparison, but that's how they painted him, and that's why we lost.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I think
but
you've basically pointed out three things there, and I think it's exactly what it is. The three things that you pointed out. It is the either intentional or unintentional imploding of the NDP at the hands of Jagmeet Singh. It is the Trump factor. And now my brain is exploded, and I can't remember the third thing that you literally were just talking about. What was it?
What was
I had
don't know.
you know what you know what's irritating about
you got Vanya on a fucking roll.
you know what's irritating about this brain fart? I came up with this three-pronged thing like 2 days
Jesus
ago, and
Christ,
I've been waiting
welcome
for
to my
today
world.
to mention it.
Yeah.
It was Jagmeet Singh, it was the Trump factor, and it was it was Pierre Poilievre himself. Pierre Poilievre, for a significant portion of the last decade, has been, how do I put this? Disagreeable.
I would say he was singularly focused on one enemy, and that was Justin Trudeau.
Yeah,
And when
sure. But
Justin
even
Trudeau
before
was
he
removed
was,
from the equation, there was nobody to attack.
I remember when O'Toole, the leadership race happened where O'Toole became leader. And I remember at the time people saying it needs to be Poilievre, it needs to be Poilievre, because people within the conservative echo chamber love when Pierre Poilievre talks circles around somebody and makes them look like an idiot.
Yeah.
They love that. And I remember at the time, in fact, if we rewind our episodes, I think I said it on the air at the time, that I wholly disagree with that, because he is such a disagreeable person to anyone who doesn't already agree with him. He comes across like a cocky little Weasley shit. He comes across like that little kid with the big mouth who I wanted to punch in the face every single day at school. And I remember saying, like, he's the wrong guy simply because he's so abrasive. And then O'Toole happened, and he about faced for quite a while, and he stopped doing that. He completely changed his tone, and frankly, he grew up. He started acting more parliamentarian and less like Charlie Kirk.
So you're talking Poilievre did.
Poilievre did.
Yeah.
And this was after O'Toole lost the election. He did. And then when it came time for the next leadership race, I was like, you know what? Like, I see the attempt to change the public persona, like the abrasiveness of his public persona. And I think that's a great thing. Like, hey, yeah, let's take a run with Poilievre. Let's see what happens. And I think he has changed quite a lot. There was obviously still very much flashes of that again, our echo chamber absolutely loved, but the rest of Canada hated. And I think that people were willing to get on board with him because they were so exacerbated with Justin Trudeau. They were willing to put up with him acting like a cocky asshole, eating an apple in an orchard, talking to a dipshit journalist. And then I'm sorry, but like, as a parliamentarian, he was acting like a dickhead.
So that was kind of his role in the party, right? He was the attack dog, the bulldog, right? That was the thing that he did for most of his career. You know, Stephen Harper used him for that. Every other leader used him for that. Hey, I don't want to look like the bad guy, but you go ahead and you hammer these guys on this issue and 3, 4, 5, right? But you know, and his role has changed in the last while. Obviously, he's matured. He's gotten married. He has kids. His perspective. That's one of his visible. Kids. And one of his kids also has some needs as well, that, you know, some learning differences or whatever they call them now. But
fucking life.
I get it, right? That's everybody. Everybody's family can relate to something like that, right? But I think he's still the guy. I think he's still the leader of the Conservative Party that we need. Ultimately speaking,
I agree right now.
Yeah, and I don't see an alternative personally.
But I do think
else. He did get backstabbed by a couple of premiers as well. Like Ford.
Fair. That's very true. And I'm seeing in the comments, like especially Carly and JR talking about JR, or talking about Pierre Polyev, and JR makes this one comment. He says, "I think Pierre Polyev can rehabilitate his image if he continues like he did on this election." I agree with that. I think that, and when I say that he was very unparliamentarian, and I'm saying all of those things, I'm not saying that like Polyev sucks and he needs to step down. I don't think that's actually a thing. I think that especially since we came closer to calling the election or the election happening, he has done a very good job to make a very visible, concerted effort to show that he is more mature. And I think that even like if another election was called tomorrow, I don't think you would see the apple eating in the orchard scene again. At least I hope not.
I hope not.
I don't think so. And when the next parliament opens, it'll be interesting because I think he's still going to be the same guy that calls the bullshit where the bullshit needs to be called.
That's his job.
100%. But I also think that he's going to be less antagonistic about it.
Yeah. I think there's going to be an opportunity for him to show that he can be a grown-up in parliament and work with the other side for the best interest of the country in what a lot of people, and this was a term that I heard repeatedly stated on every single channel when we were watching the election from a lot of different, I would call it left-leaning analysts that were obviously reflecting what a lot of people in the street were saying. A lot of people are claiming this to be the biggest crisis in Canada in the history of the country, and I think that's massively overstated. But the perception, though, which a lot of times is reality, and because we got the reality of that perception as a result of the election, is that people are afraid. They want to deal with President Trump. They want to smack him back in the face. They want to defend Canadian honor. They want our, fair trade again restored and all these tariffs gone. They have to stop talking about 51st state and annexation of the country, which, I mean, I'm sure the Greenland guys aren't really thrilled with it right now either. So if they had an election, I'm sure whoever could come out and talk the biggest amount of smack on Donald Trump and JD Vance showing up with no jacket in Greenland, then they would probably win too. So I get it, right? But I think ultimately speaking, there is going to be a pause or a period of time where there's going to have to be cooperation, and that's going to evaporate inside of 6 to 12 months. There's a small window where they're going to have to work together for the first little while. And everybody see we're getting together, Team Canada, working together, both sides of the aisle, blah, blah, blah. And then the one thing's going to happen, mark my words, 6 to 12 months from now, or 6 to 8, and they're going to try to do some more bullshit, or whether it's passing taxation on home equity, or whether it's not building pipelines nationally, or the more gun bans and spending billions of dollars on that instead of healthcare or dental care or whatever's important to the NDP or the Bloc. So there's going to be some interesting things happening. But
that's my silver lining.
Yeah,
is I don't foresee Mark Carney being able to eke out the longest minority governments in history the way that Justin Trudeau somehow did. In the comments here, John Bergen is just saying, he hopes Pierre Polyev takes over Battle River Crowfoot. That seems pretty likely that that's going to happen. So he'll be in Parliament and he'll be doing his job in Parliament, and that's all a good thing. And I also do think that there's not really an alliance, right? Carney would need the support of he doesn't really need the support of a whole lot, actually. He's only 2 seats away from a majority. But by the same token, Pierre Polyev would need to convince less people to vote non-confidence. And I don't think that the NDP, I would hope that the NDP realizes that they can't play cockblocker when it comes to these votes of no confidence the way that Jagmeet Singh did for the last year.
I don't know if they have much of a choice. They're broke.
But to play cockblocker?
Right.
Yeah, they are.
Can't afford another election. So they're going to ride it out for 4 years or however long they can, I think. If it was me running the party, I would just go for as long as you can.
Well, that makes me sad. But if that were to happen, then really the only option is to convince the bloc that they can get their 9 seats back.
Yep.
Or is it 11 seats?
I think it was like 12 or
12.
something. Yeah.
Something like
12.
12 seats. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
And however it happens, I mean, Christ, as long as it happens.
But there were a lot of breakthroughs. If I look for silver linings, not only could like percentage of vote share, because population has increased by like almost 2 million people or 1.5 million or whatever since the last election. But
Yeah.
I don't look at proportion of vote gained by the Conservatives, and people are claiming like the largest this and that. I don't know if that matters so much. The vote
It's
efficiency
nowhere.
is something that has always played the Conservative Party, right?
Yeah.
So the concentration of votes in Southern Ontario and that GTA area, the 905 area was really the big win for Conservatives, I feel. And I think I can't remember if I said this on this podcast or in a different one a bunch of years ago, but I said the key to the Conservatives winning more in Ontario and BC is going to be the union vote. And that's what actually ended up happening. The union vote flipped to the Conservatives because the Conservative Party started talking about workers.
Right.
The people who are earning those paychecks were getting screwed out of whatever. And, you don't want to work more overtime because you're going to hit a different tax threshold and this, and that. You're going to have less take home.
Is that the union vote or is that the blue collar vote, do you think?
Well, a bunch of unions did actually
they did endorse it?
They did flip. Yep.
What a crazy upside down world we're living in, hey?
Right. So that was a key component. I mean, obviously the working class folks as well as the union vote together. I mean, they're not one ubiquitous kind of thing, but they, I think, were a big factor in a lot of the 9-0 following it. I think that was a difference maker. Now, whether that carries through in the next election, we'll have to see how the next bunch of years goes. I'm not really super optimistic, but I think it's trending the right way.
Mm-hmm. It would be very interesting to see if the NDP actually got their shit together and voted in a leader that was worth more than the powder to blow him to hell, and they brought a lot of the leftist vote back to them. I think that would be very interesting, because we have to.
The funniest thing about that to me, can I just comment on that for a second?
Yeah, go for it.
The funniest thing to me is that you have these super lefty socialists.
Yeah.
Who, I mean, that's fine. Have socialistic views. I'm okay with that. Like, that's a free country. You think whatever you're going to think.
Yeah.
But then don't go vote for the central banker that was the head of the Bank of England on Bay Street. Are you kidding me? You're going to vote for the guy who is like the ultimate capitalist?
The guy has been the governor of 2 G7 country national banks. He is a 1%er of the 1%ers. And he's like, no, he's my guy. Yeah, fuck these people. Well, and that goes back to what we were talking about before, and I was going to say it, I guess I didn't say it out loud. The fear of Trump made people so easy to manipulate that they were manipulated into voting for a 1%er as their
people who were NDP voters out of fear. Voted for the guy who is the ultimate capitalist, if there ever was one.
If you're in the NDP party think tank, you got to be like, okay, like we need to change our strategy, because Jagmeet Singh absolutely 100 to the day that he, in fact, during his concession speech, he's talking about fighting for the common person and fighting for you, the regular person, and blah, 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 blah. That's been his rhetoric from the day that he rose to the day that he fell down in flames. The NDP's got to be rethinking that strategy. If
you're
unions
assuming NDP
are voting conservative and leftist former NDP voters are voting for a 1%er globalist, globalist banker, the strategy's got to change somehow.
So at the end of the day, Mark Carney was in the Harper government as well. Sorry, whiskey's getting to me, I guess. So
Harper
he was
in the governor of the Bank of Canada.
Exactly. So if you look at it kind of like, Donald Trump was a Democrat back in the 80s and early 90s, and then he eventually became a Republican in the 2000s, whatever, and this and that. Carney was for all intents and purposes, was a conservative who ended up switching hats and now is a liberal and whatever, right? So if people can't really see what it is, it's a thirst for power. It's a power game. It doesn't matter party that you're running for, unless you've been somebody like Pierre, who's been a fairly staunch conservative his entire life. I mean, for God's sakes, he was here at the University of Calgary. He was in the conservative club. He was the president of it, I guess, and whatever else. And so he has been fairly true to his core ideals for a long time. So it's not like you could ever accuse him of being a member of the Communist Party of Canada or something. So it's the funny part to me is the like I said earlier is the fact that they went and people just went and completely were scared shitless into voting for whoever they thought was the guy that was going to take on Donald Trump and defend Canadian honor. Now, if you look, the media had a massive part to play in this. I came across a collage of articles. This was a week and a half ago, so before the election, and I showed it to Carly. I'm like, can you believe this? And it was a snippet, a screenshot of every single newspaper in Canada. And so it was something like 35-1 of positivity towards Carney to one being either positive or neutral on Pierre Poilievre. These are articles and headlines on the front page. And so it was
it's only our mainstream media that's talking about Pierre Poilievre stepping down. Nobody else is talking about that.
Yeah. No.
But and it always will continue.
How do you overcome that, though? That's the question. Like, as a conservative leader or candidate or somebody running in an election, how do you overcome that deluge and barrage of negativity that you're being faced with every single day from a coverage perspective, from interview questions being posed to you go on a talk show and they're asking you about whatever, and as opposed to what you're going to do to make make your family's life better. Most people that I heard or saw comments of online, of whether it was Reddit, whether it was Facebook, whether it was Instagram or whatever, and I try to read as much of it as I can with what little time I have these days, but most of it were like, oh, he was always against something, not for anything. It was the number one comment that I heard about Pierre Poilievre. I'm like, have you ever listened to him talk? Probably not, because you'd have to go and see it out.
Follow the mainstream media. That is correct. If you follow only mainstream media.
This brings an important point, honestly, you guys. The people, I dare say the majority of people who get involved in elections haven't paid attention until the elections come. Now, the understanding of why bills are voted against, for or against, are much deeper than what's revealed in an election campaign, right?
Sure.
The Liberals are very good, very fucking good at proposing a bill with a whole bunch of shit stacked in behind it, unrelated to the title of that goddamn bill.
Omnibus, they call it.
Right?
Yeah, omnibus, yeah.
Right? Yeah. So the reason that opposition parties vote against a certain bill is because portions of that bill do not represent the intent of that, the name of that bill, the original intent, the proper
the original intent. You're saying it right.
Of that bill.
Yeah.
And
the stated intent.
The Liberals are very good at saying they voted against childcare. No, they didn't vote against childcare. They voted against the fact that you put some piece of shit within that fucking bill.
Well, it's like saying the bill to end childhood poverty. Now, on the back end, it also gives $500 million to Hamas. So you vote against that, and obviously, well, you're clearly for child poverty.
Child poverty, yeah. So that's something that I was going to mention earlier.
Sure. Dental care, $10 a day child care, etc. Every fucking one of them. Liberals are fucking geniuses at doing this. And it's all fuel for the fire for this point. It's they don't do it in the moment like normal thinking people do. It's for fuel for the fire for when the fucking federal election happens.
All they're doing is loading ammo to use against their opposition down the road, right? So they're setting traps. It's politics 101, right?
Sorry.
Yeah.
So this brings to a point that I was going to make earlier. You've got really not exclusively, but I mean, you kind of got two primary types of politicians. You've got true believers, and then you've got politicians. Okay?
Opportunist.
Yeah, I would consider Pierre Poilievre more of a true believer. I think he genuinely believes in what he's selling to the public.
Agreed.
Justin Trudeau, absolutely not a true believer. And I think in general, like generally speaking, I think that the Conservative Party tends to attract more true believer representatives, and the Liberal Party tends to attract more politicians. And I think for that reason, and I'll give you a great example of this. All of the people that were a part of Justin Trudeau's cabinet and were parroting the same idiotic horseshit that Justin Trudeau was parroting for the last 10 years and would swear up, down, left, right, and center in question period, in committees, to the public, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All the nonsense have done a complete about face now that Carney's in power. And the talking points have completely changed from those.
They'll come back, Chris.
Even
they will come back.
Well, they will follow what Carney wants to put out there because they are politicians. They don't.
I don't know that he's that creatively fluid. You know what I'm saying? I'm certain.
No,
a lot of the stuff will still come back, and those fucking androids will.
But it's easy
to trumpet that shit. The 8 out of 10 people will benefit from fucking carbon tax.
But it's easy to write them off. I do. I know what you're saying, but it's easy to write those people off and just call them androids or robots or whatever. But what they are politicians. And the Liberal Party is better at politicking than the Conservative Party. That's why they have become the natural ruling party of the country. It's how they have been able to stack the deck on the Supreme Court and
Senate.
It's they are
party is also fucking androids.
They have more politicians on in their roster and behind the scenes than the Conservative Party does.
Let's
I'm not saying that. Go ahead.
Not just politicians, but the institutions within Ottawa as well, and the entire federal employment system.
But I think that's because of a long-seated history of having politicians to set up that institution.
Okay, but the growth of 100,000 federal employees is 100% in the last 10 fucking years under the Liberal control.
And not just that, how much has the federal government grown from an employee perspective over the last 10 years? And how many of those employees were in the new redrawn riding, which is why Poilievre lost his seat, apart from the Liberal government throwing a bunch of money at it.
Right. Redrawn to a Liberal stronghold, a fucking huge area.
And 81 people or something stupid on the ballot.
Riding.
It grew by a third.
91 fucking.
It grew by a third. That in the and the third that it grew by went 80% Liberal in the last election.
Yeah, interesting how that is.
Fucking red. Yeah,
and like I thought it was like 91 candidates or something stupid, but it was like a meter long ballot. Regardless, like there's some tomfuckery going on there. There's no question about that. But
it'll be good to have Pierre back in Alberta. I'll tell you that.
That'll be nice. Yeah. I was hearing talk about. In fact, a CBC analyst was theorizing the day after the election that he may that may happen in Saskatchewan, and I was like, yes, please. Sure. They were theorizing that they may want to have, for only the fourth time in Canadian history, the leader of a major political party having their seat in Saskatchewan. And I was like, fuck, go for it. Like, that would be great.
Let's go.
But, it looks like it's going to be
Andrew Scheer,
which is also fun. No,
it's
Andrew
Damien Turek.
No. He's talking about the last Canadian leader or the last leader from Saskatchewan.
Yeah.
I actually
It
don't
is
know who
Scheer. It is
the
Scheer.
three were. There was Scheer, there was Diefenbaker,
Regina
and not King.
No.
I can't remember who the third was.
Well, wasn't
Leaders of
Tommy Douglas from Saskatchewan?
Yes. Shit.
Diefenbaker was.
I can't remember. Anyway, we're all failing our Canadian
matter.
history here. That's
Going
fine.
Yeah, we
ways
are.
back.
And
Yeah.
this is going to take too long to Google. If anybody was it Tommy Douglas was from Saskatchewan, but I don't think his seat was in Saskatchewan.
Mhm.
I'm not sure.
We
Doesn't
suck.
matter. How far do we go back? How far do we go back?
Well, but hold on. I wanted to ask you
1867.
guys. I wanted to ask you guys the question because we all seem to agree that the Liberals have more politicians and are better at politicking. So does that beg the question, do the Conservatives need to get better at politicking? Or can the Conservatives continue to
so what does
really
that bring
hold the
with-
moral ground?
Right.
It can be both.
Right.
Fair.
I think strategically they need to get better. There were obviously, I don't think the Conservative Party is as big of a machine as the Liberal Party, so to speak.
Not even
They don't have I don't think they have quite the heavy hitters on the organizational side that were able to do things like, if you need to go, I mean, I feel like Doug Ford's a bad example because I feel like Doug Ford is actually a liberal and I think he runs on the PC banner, which is more progressive than it is conservative, but he at the ultimately has always been kind of viewed as the gangster in chief, right? He's the guy he's the man of the people, the Al Capone, get you what you need, get things done. If somebody's not fixing a pothole, I'll come down and do it myself, kind of thing, right?
Don't get that guy at all.
But he ultimately, I feel like him and Tim Houston cost this election for the Conservatives because Pierre Poilievre has never been a fan of his, never reached out to him, I don't think, when he won his re-election. And personalities and egos clash, and then he went and met with Mark Carney the day after he won the leadership of the Liberal Party, which was seen as an endorsement in Ontario of his policies as opposed to Pierre Poilievre's. That, I think, coupled with a short election cycle, so we pride ourselves in not having an election last 2 years like they do in the States, but I think our election is too short. It favors the incumbent every single time.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. Well, especially this
5
one,
weeks, not long enough.
Yeah, I noticed in 38 days, Mark Carney's polling numbers dropped. It just, I think the people that were really kind of on the fence, they had a little bit of, some of them had enough time to rethink their knee-jerk reaction about the Trump thing, I think, but obviously not enough people.
There was not enough time to recover from that, honestly.
Yeah,
and in the 5 weeks,
and I do think there are going to be a significant number of people that regret their vote within the next 12 to 18 months.
But will they change it in the next one? That's the thing.
Well,
that's that
$1 million question.
Right.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are going to return to the NDP that voted for Liberals because they did their civic duty by defending against the big bad orange man. So, and voting against the Conservatives because they saw that as basically capitulation to Trump for whatever reason. I don't know. Like, they're so misinformed and they're a little siloed that they have no idea what the actual reality is, but it is what it is. That's their thing, right? So they saw it as their duty to vote against the Conservatives, whatever it took.
Sure.
So I think a certain portion of, I think probably 80+% of the people who switched parties will go back. There might be some who stay.
Yeah.
Okay. So NDP and the People's Party of Canada. Okay, there's a lot of people who follow them who have lost faith in the Progressive Conservatives of Canada. How the hell do you appeal to them? Because and what is it about the PCs that alienate so many people? And it's inaction, it's history and perceived inaction. Now, how far do we go back in history to say, okay, the Conservatives 30 fucking years ago voted against this shit? Where's the fucking line? This is what I don't understand. There's only evolution on a select party. Okay, you know what? The Liberals are a perfect example. 10 years of fucking horse shit, wild fucking debt, and spending my goddamn tax dollars in fucking Egypt for some shit that shouldn't resonate with anybody, shouldn't be a positive thing for anybody, but yet we go back to them. And I can go back 18 years. The conservatives did something negative. Healthcare, education, whatever. They brought
Not even
this
that.
in
There are
in
hot button topics.
1972.
There are buttons that
Right?
they push every time they want to see their poll numbers go up, and they mention abortion, guns, and gay rights.
Right.
Now it's trans rights, whatever. Those three buttons, they play like levers every time. It's a guaranteed win
Right.
every single time. So every time the liberals bring up banning more guns, they use that as it's a trap for the conservatives, which is why Pierre didn't talk about gun control or canceling out any of the things, and he didn't. And a lot of gun voters or conservative voters were like, "Oh, he's never going to change anything. He didn't even talk about it once." Yeah, no shit, he didn't talk about it because it's a horrible thing to talk about during an election in Canada.
And that's why at the beginning of the show, I said that it's not just the left. It's not just the left, and frankly, if people really want, and presumably people that we see on these forums touting the PPC and all this sort of stuff, presumably you care about keeping your guns, and like this is not an ideological argument. This is a factual argument. If you continue to be an ideologue and continue to push for the PPC, we will continue to struggle in the federal sphere. Now, I get that I think I counted at the end of it, I counted, I think, 4 ridings, just myself. There may have been more, I don't know, but I counted 4 ridings where the Liberal vote would not have been Liberal if not for the PPC vote. That the margin that the Conservative candidate lost by was less than the PPC vote.
And no, that's great. That's an improvement over the last time, because I think it was like 16 or 14 or something last time. So,
absolutely.
We're making progress.
And here's the other thing: like, you're supposed to be this like democratic, free-thinking, true believer. So you're following Maxime Bernier and the PPC being the least democratic party in Canadian politics. You've got a 4-time loser who has not been able to get his own seat, let alone anything else, let alone anyone else elected.
Ever since
who continues that he is the leader of the party and does not open his party to any sort of democratic process whatsoever. And the only thing that the PPC is an obstructionist party now. And they whisper these sweet little lies into the ears of people who desperately want an answer. And I don't necessarily blame them for wanting an answer, because I get it. Maxime Bernier says a lot of the right things for a right-wing conservative.
I loved Max back in the day. Absolutely.
And he continues to say nice things for social conservatives, especially. But the reality is that it's all just he's dripping poison in your ear. And where what I believe the personal responsibility of it comes into play is that, just like we expect leftist voters to not be blind ideologues, our blind ideologue right-wing voters need to get a slap in the face and a bucket of water on the head too.
I don't know what you're talking about. I thought everybody that voted for conservatives was quote unquote far right. So there's nothing farther than a conservative. According to the internet and every single news article that I've read, far right party defeated in Canada. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about?
That's only if you're further right than me. I still love these websites that tell you where you are on the political spectrum compared to your party, and they keep putting the CPC in like the right, like halfway between extreme and centrist on the right side. And I'm like, what fucking planet is the CPC like halfway extreme right? In a lot of ways, the Canadian conservatives are further left than the Democrats in the United States.
I say that to people in the States all the time. So we've been in the US for a while. We're basically home now. But one of the things that we talk about with our American friends and people that we meet along the way, and they're like, oh, you guys got an election coming up, or when's your next election? We talk politics quite a bit because they're curious, because obviously they just had the big election. So they're always a lot of times apologizing to us when they find out we're Canadian, which is interesting. But one of the big things that I always tell them is like, hey, don't confuse Canadian conservatives with the Republican Party or any iteration of it, because it is a lot more ideologically close to what I would call the Democratic Party in the US from the 90s. Amen. So I think a lot of people have a hard time accepting that in Canada, because all they watch, and I've said this on previous conversations before, where Canadians consume a lot of US news, a lot, a lot more than Americans ever consume of their own. So the Canadian electorate is primed to have a very US and American oriented viewpoint when it comes to politics. And a lot of it is superiority complex. Canadians feel like they're better than Americans.
Which we need to get the fuck over.
Yeah.
Jesus.
And they also
very irritating.
Horrible.
But everything gets interpreted through the lens of knowing all the things that are happening down there, feeling like we're better than that, and not wanting to do the same thing that they're doing down there, and then falsely equating our conservatives with their conservatives, right? So those are all things working against the Conservative Party that has to be overcome. I mean, if you look at it, why did Mark Carney go on the freaking Daily Show? A Canadian,
because even Canadians would watch it.
He was going on American talk shows to
because Canadians would watch
Canadian vote. Because they knew that his people, you know, the GTA area, Montreal, Quebec, you know, maybe a lot of the urban votes in Calgary, Edmonton, Vancouver, wherever, we're all watching the Daily Show and Colbert.
It's exactly
and
why
stuff.
Justin Trudeau was on. Was it Jimmy, or was he on Colbert? Trudeau.
Who brought American-style politics to Canada?
The Liberal Party did. No, the Liberal Party didn't.
No. No. It was the fucking conservatives, don't you know?
2010.
Isn't that what CBC said?
We've reached the part of the evening where we've seen.
They keep accusing the Canadian conservatives bringing American-style all sorts of things into Canada, like American-style gun laws, American-style healthcare, American-style politics, ... and carry on, when in fact it was the Liberal Party who strategized with the Obama administration and his leadership and his strategists back in 2010, as early as that. They knew that Justin Trudeau was going to be the heir apparent, and they were trying to figure out ways to ride on Obama's wave of change and hope and kind of the sunny ways. And that's how that all came about, guys.
Yeah,
you bet.
I just going back really quickly to what you were saying about the anti-Americanism and the better than attitude that a lot of Canadians have. I struggle to find a
honest to God.
It is, but I also struggle to find a better example of the Dunning-Kruger effect, the actual Dunning-Kruger effect, than the belief of so many Canadians. And I do believe that this sentiment is much stronger in the East than it is in the West. But it is a hell of a thing to base your beliefs of what you want entirely on what you don't want.
Yeah, and they accuse Pierre of that.
And he does. They do, and there is a serious cognitive dissonance in that method.
Fuck.
you know, but you can't.
Right.
This is the thing, like we're talking again, the beginning of the show. This is our resonance chamber. There's nobody listening to this that doesn't already agree with us.
Yeah.
There's nobody listening to this who isn't going to continue to agree with us. And you cannot bring someone onto your side by saying, listen, asshole, you are experiencing the Dunning-Kruger effect and you have to sort out your cognitive dissonance.
No,
It's,
you know
it's
what?
not going to work.
You have to be fucking smart enough to actually even realize that you're there and acknowledge that you're part of this fucking Dunning-Kruger effect to have any effect whatsoever.
Well, it comes into
Right?
that whole superiority complex. Like we are smarter than them. We will not do this, make the same mistakes. We would never elect quote unquote orange man, right? And that's I hear a lot of people are talking that way.
We just did.
But
only
on
difference
top of
is
that,
instead of electing private sector orange man, we elected public sector orange man.
Fucking right, we did.
Sorry,
but on top of that, their entire party has kind of oriented itself around the mentality of, I'll hate to say the term wokeism, but the term of wokeism is really around, hey, I'm more progress along the evolutionary chain than you are, because I have awoken and I know things and I know what's better for you than you do. I know what's better for you than the rest of the folks as well. So I have a moral high ground. Right. So when
that is the fatal flaw of progressivism.
That is the fucking go-to. That is, it just fucking drives me insane. I am here. You are here. You're fucking stupid and ignorant.
So I fully admit to having a lot of progressive views. I do share a lot of views with progressives, but that exactly what you just described, Vanya, is why the progressives lost me.
Yeah, same. I would call myself a fiscal conservative with a lot of libertarian leanings, which naturally are very progressive, right? Yes. Like if you believe in individual freedom and in personal rights and liberties, there is no way that you're willing to give that up to a government, right? So
that's right. Yeah.
Right. So yeah, I mean, ultimately speaking, you know, I think social safety nets are fine to a certain degree, right? Certain entitlements to make sure that the people who fall through the cracks have a somewhere to fall back on. I think that's reasonable. Now, when people start to go and abuse those, that's when I have a problem with it. When people, don't pick themselves up and work through their butts off and try to achieve something with their lives and expect somebody else to do it for them, then I have a problem with it, right? So I think there's I think you and I, Chris, see a lot. We've talked about this offline quite a bit before. I think we see eye to eye on a lot of things, and I think I'm the same way where I never voted for the Liberal Party, but I could see I think that's a reasonable position to take when they propose something, right? And I was like, okay, I could see that being reasonable. I could meet in the middle somewhere there. They started to lose me about 10 years ago.
Yep.
And I'm not on board with anything that you're saying right now because you're insane.
Exactly. And I think that nowadays that is the difference between, let's call them neo-progressivism and neo-moderate libertarianism. I think a big difference between the two, if not the biggest difference, is the belief in personal responsibility. Neo-progressivism absolutely abdicates personal responsibility in favor of whiny nihilism a lot of the time.
Yes.
I think it comes down to two words and being the difference. And I think it speaks to exactly what you said. And I agree with you 100%. I think the two words are, I believe in equality. They believe in equity.
Yes.
Right. So equity to me is a fucking nonsense word. Equity is what you have in your house or in an investment that you haven't capitalized on yet. Right. But what they're talking about is equality of outcome. Right. So
that's right.
So there's no way that you can guarantee that without punishing, 50 to 60% of the population along the way. Right. So what the hell is the point of that country? You might as well go live in, I don't know, somewhere backwards.
Yeah. Equality of outcome is an idealistic, I think, as idealistic of a concept as communism is.
Yep. It's rooted in communism.
Yeah, and you're 100% right. Absolutely. It is, and it's a beautiful thought that just doesn't work in reality.
Yeah, it's like utopian Marxism, right? Like that's kind of what it is.
Yeah,
It is.
It's the same as pacifism. I think that world peace is a wonderful ideal that we should all strive for and
We should all
continue to
aspire
fight
to it.
for.
Yep.
But I'm not going to confuse the idealism of world peace with actually thinking that we're going to achieve world peace.
Right. Completely discounting humans.
And and
their
I'm
nature.
certainly not going to take away somebody else's human rights in the name of forcing world peace upon them, because I'm trying to manufacture it.
But Chris, they know
I'm
better.
sure the shittiest people in society
right.
will just come back around and say, you know what? I would rather have peace and tranquility and everybody love everybody. That would be a better way. You know what? Inject humans.
You know what? Punch them in
And
the
they
mouth.
will fuck you.
Richard, that sounds like you'll own nothing and you'll be happier for it.
Yeah.
You know what? Let's try it. For
it.
years I have said all these people that that just stop oil and all that kind of shit. I am 100% in favor of turning off the tap, turning off the switch. Let's fucking do it right now. Right fucking
we'll see
now.
who survives.
And we will see inside 3 weeks who will be left on this fucking planet. 100% in favor. Let's do it. Let's go.
I vote yes.
I vote yes.
Amen.
I do find it funny that pretty much my entire life is centered around violence. Whether it's
your heart.
Whether it's fighting for sport or my love of firearms, my whole life is centered around violence. I think I understand violence very well. I've been able to successfully teach it
to most people in the Western world, Chris.
I say that not trying to boost myself up, but I firmly believe that is true.
I think Chris can all objectively say yes.
Okay, so what I think is funny about that is that I think I am a less aggressive and violent person, just demonstrably, than a significant number of progressives who claim to want world peace and everybody get along. And the reason I say that is because they always want
you have
these
applied wisdom.
No, it's the concept of those who know war were the least likely to ever return to it.
Right? Absolutely.
Yes.
I was talking with this about a buddy of mine at the range today, and we were literally saying that same thing, that these people are so aggressive and so violent, but it is an unskilled violence. And it is when you understand violence. Yeah. And here's the thing. I only understand call it unimportant violence. Like I'm not a soldier. I've never been an officer. I've never been in the military. So there's a whole level that I've never even experienced when it comes to violence.
Right.
But when you understand any level of violence, I think it's very easy to see who is unskilled in violence. I don't even have to see somebody throw a punch before I can tell whether they're skilled physically. I can tell by the way that and I'm not joking about this, I can tell by the way that they're standing, whether they are skilled in fighting with their hands and their fists. All four of us, I guarantee it, can tell as soon as somebody picks up a gun whether they are skilled with that firearm or not.
Inside of a second, yeah.
Inside of a second. And these people are the least skilled, but the most violent. And that I think makes them very dangerous. I forget what my original point was, but I think that makes them very dangerous. We're going to bring it back to
Maslow's theory right there, because I mean, those are the people that have had more or less everything provided for them. Almost, I would say, in most situations, not always. And I don't want to generalize everybody and put everybody in the same category, but I think generally speaking, those are the people that have had their basic needs met their entire lives, one way or another, whether through
without
family.
having the top two peers met.
Yeah.
The,
So
the top two peers being esteem and self-actualization. I think they haven't had either of those met.
And a lot of people feel like they get something out of fighting for somebody else's cause. And we saw this with Gaza through and through.
Yes.
People were blindly ignoring the reality of what actually occurred and were basically victim blaming.
Yep.
And then they took up the cause of the perceived victim, and it was the aggressor. Now all of the victim became the aggressor all of a sudden. Yep. So it was oppressor, oppressee mentality, and they will always side with the oppressed.
And these people who are safe all the way across the pond are so aggressively violent towards that one side that they are calling for the eradication of an entire race of people. Not for the first time in the history of those people. No, I myself was making jokes about it earlier in this episode.
Exactly. But also, while also completely ignoring the fact that the largest massacre of that people took place on the 7th of October. And, then, they try to justify it through a lot of really shitty arguments and really bad data points. And none of them hold up to any kind of actual scrutiny. But that is, I think, to me, indicative of people who are looking for a cause at all times. And people, and these groups will cause hop, as I would call it. They go from, they went from gay rights, which was, I think, a very valid cause. I believe in equality across the board. So if, people want to get married, go get married. I don't give a shit. You're not affecting my marriage in any way. Go do your thing. Wonderful. Right. So when that fight was won, they moved on to the next thing, and then the next thing, and the next thing, and it became trans rights, and it became Gaza, and it became BLM, and it became Gaza again, because that seems to happen every 5 years, whatever. So so I think it's the same group of people consistently who are looking for the next cause to attach themselves to because they want to so badly belong, because they have nothing of actual value happening in their lives.
There is no purpose other than that particular protest or grievance of whatever sort, right? Yeah. There's nothing in life other than that fucking grievance.
Which brings you back to your point, Vanya, Maslow's hierarchy. They are desperately seeking their esteem.
100%.
Yep.
And absolutely 100%. In a very unhealthy way. Now, I think there's we're a little over an hour and a half here, but I think that there's one really important thing that we haven't talked about yet. And the calls for it are coming primarily from our two provinces, Alberta and Saskatchewan, and that is separatization.
We're with
big bad S word.
You know that word where one group leaves another group? Separation, divorce, separation. What are let's go through the whole panel, because poor Mike hasn't said anything this whole episode. Let's go through the whole panel and see what everybody thinks about separation. Let's start with Mike.
We could avoid a lot of the talks of separation if you just get rid of equalization payments. That's it. No one really cares. Point. We just don't want to keep paying for it.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
If they went tomorrow and said equalization's done, this would disappear overnight. I'd put money on
that's never going to happen, Mike.
Yeah, it won't, but yeah. But I think you are discounting the right to choose that the federal government keeps stepping in on provinces, and I think that's a big part of it for a lot of people as well.
Well, Quebec says, okay, we don't want to pipeline.
Sorry.
Oh, you're right. Okay, so let me explain that real quick, and then we'll go back to Mike. So for our American viewers and listeners, equalization is a concept that was manufactured in Canada to socialize Canada financially, and it is a system where the provinces that produce the most GDP subsidize the provinces that produce the least GDP by transferring portions of their wealth every year to the provinces that don't have the wealth. We divide our
Through a
provinces.
mechanism in the federal
Chose
tax system,
not
right?
to produce the most GDP.
In some cases, to yes, very much. So we divide our provinces into have provinces and have not provinces. Have provinces pay a portion of their it's not their GDP. Is it their federal?
It's the federal tax portion, yeah.
They pay a portion of their federal tax portion to the have not provinces. Now, the province that me and Rooster are in, we were have not provinces for a very long time. Coincidentally, we got rid of the NDP, and we've been a have province ever since we haven't had an NDP government. Well, I don't know how that works. Now, and I'm not saying
resource economy or something.
Somehow, I don't know how.
Isn't that something?
And they stopped kowtowing to everything that unions wanted as well. Which imagine that. Anyway, so that's been cleared up for our Americans. Mike, did you have any other thoughts on separation?
Yep. No, basically, honestly, it comes down to money. If Quebec's going to say we don't want a pipeline, I'm like, cool, then you don't get the money that supports you and everything that you do.
Agreed.
Like that's how we pay for it. If you don't want,
and you
that,
don't
then
get
you
the energy from it either, you fucks.
Well,
No,
also,
you get nothing. Like,
yeah, it would also have to take into account their energy production that is currently excluded from the calculus, right? So the calculation excludes all their green energy, i.e., their hydroelectric dams that produce electricity. So that is excluded out of the revenue calculation.
Yeah,
and
they're the biggest hydro producer. Are they a bigger hydro producer
selling
than
to the U.S.? Yes.
Yeah, they are the number one hydro
very
producer
much
in the country. Yeah.
Yeah, and they are the number one recipient of transfer payments.
$13.4 billion.
You want to talk to the Newfoundlanders about hydroelectricity?
Why?
You want to talk about?
I won't be able to understand what they're saying.
Holy fuck! The hydroelectric plants that they built in Labrador,
really,
by the Quebecois. Look it up, dude. It
owned
is a
by the
big fucking deal. You bet. You bet.
That's interesting.
Oh, get to know.
Is that your thoughts on separation?
No, my thoughts on separation are much deeper.
Oh, okay.
Maybe
we should have asked you last.
Maybe. Should I go last?
I don't know. You know how long you're going to be.
So, this is kind of a lifelong thing for me. I wish I was as intelligent as I am passionate. Separation for me.
That's the opposite of
honest to God. I'm very well aware of both situations, scenarios, whatever.
Okay.
So separation. It is much more complicated than what it seems to be on the poster in the window, if you get what I mean. Okay. Yep. It seems easy. It seems straightforward. Something we have to consider, and it has been considered, but not very widespread, is the Indigenous interests.
I was going to say the same thing.
They have a lot of control, and it is a lot of emotion. You look at this last election and several before this, it is emotionally driven. Mm-hmm. Correct?
It's also a problem without a solution.
It is.
Without an equitable solution.
Well, according to certain groups, yes. But regardless of the actuality of it, it carries a big stick.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. So in my opinion, the federal relationship with the Indigenous people all across Canada they have done a very successful job of conditioning the Indigenous people that the federal government is what they need.
Yeah.
To set up a system of reliance.
For many reasons. Say again, Vanya, sorry?
I said they set up a system of reliance.
Absolutely. So the thought of divorcing themselves from that system of reliance is scary as hell to them. They cannot see that they would be more prosperous if we went to the effort of involving them, partnering, genuinely partnering with these people, with these bands, getting them involved. The chance of a more fulfilling life for all of these people would be so much greater, separated from that fucking federal toxic relationship that they have had for many generations. They cannot see that. A lot of them. I'm not going to say all of them, but a lot of them. And
I think it's even simpler than
that. That's a hard bond to break.
I think it's even simpler than that. I think it comes down to a legal issue. So most of the treaties were signed with the crown, with basically the federal representative of the crown at the time, and every single one of the treaties is encumbered to the crown. So you go, okay, how do you disassociate from that? How do you structure a new deal that they'd be willing to accept? And I think it's quite
simple. The crown
simple.
doesn't exist anymore.
The crown doesn't exist. Let's say the Alberta is a republic, Saskatchewan is a republic, whatever.
Sure.
You make a new deal. How do you make a new deal? Well, you give everybody, mineral rights to their land. You title all their land. You whatever incentives you need, whatever, like development incentives, partnership incentives, all that kind of stuff that you would do on a corporate law. Yeah, partnership. It has to be a partnership.
Partnership is a big word, man.
Yeah, it has to be a partnership. You can't dictate. It has to be something that all the parties are together at the table and figure something out. Indigenous issue aside, I don't know how I feel about it. I feel like it's been a very hard road to get to this point. I don't know how much more Alberta can take, speaking as an Albertan, along with Mike here, because he's right on the border there. But I don't know how much more Alberta can take if the status quo continues. And I think Danielle Smith has been very clear on this issue, pre-election and post-election, in her meeting with Mark Carney, that something has to change. And if it doesn't change, then we're going to have a very serious problem. And I think that problem is a referendum. So
yes,
what the referendum means, whether Albertans would actually vote for that or not, right now, I would say probably they wouldn't win. But in 6 to 10 months, maybe. I think it's a wait and see approach, right? They did lower the threshold with the proposed bill that still has to pass the House. But I don't know. I have a lot of mixed feelings on it. For most of my adult life, 25 plus, I would say I've been pro Alberta independence, just because we've been getting such a raw deal for a long time. And if people don't know what it's like to be taken advantage of, and feel like you're constantly being extracted for resources and wealth, and everything is for the benefit of the few that decide your federal election, before you even get a chance to vote, generally speaking.
But Vanya, you're just being dramatic and whiny.
Of course, that's all we are. Right? Yeah. But when you see half the country stand up against your interests, right, as a province, we have some mineral
while relying on our interest.
And actively working against it. You go, well, how does this work? How if it's a relationship, if you look at it like a marriage, and I brought up the divorce word before, if you're looking at it as a abusive relationship, all of our friends would be telling us to leave.
Yeah.
Right?
You're right. Yeah.
Leave him.
Yeah.
He's hitting you. He's stealing all your money, putting you down in front of everybody all the time. You're the redheaded stepchild, this and that. You're the hick. You're the gun lover. You're this and that. And he's always talking shit about you. So ultimately speaking, that would be grounds for divorce in any relationship, or for at least one of the partners to want to leave.
Also, the irony of progressives always wanting the "Vive la Revolution," but as soon as there's a legitimate revolution to be had, you're all a bunch of alt-right fucking lunatics.
Yeah. So I mean, like, if anybody from the other side of the aisle would be listening to the conversation, I would hope that they hear a lot of reasonable people talking about real issues, and not just a bunch of people spewing, word salads about, conspiracy theories and other bullshit that everybody thinks that that's all we talk about, right? But no, we're talking about real issues that most Canadians don't know that this is how Albertans feel. They'll hear a snippet of something in the news or in some show for some guy from Alberta talking about something, and they only give you like 5 to 15 seconds to pitch your whole case when it's a really, really complicated issue.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's no easy answer to any of it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there was an article in the Toronto Star that basically said, well, maybe it is time we let Alberta leave. And they're like, but they're probably not thinking it through. Who's going to pay for their health care?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
We're paying for everybody else.
We're paying for everybody.
I think we'll be fine on the health
we'll figure it out.
I think somebody did the math and said inside of like 2 years, we'll be free and clear of like federal debt.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah.
Of our portion of the federal debt.
Yeah.
Or maybe 6 months or something. It was stupid low. It was basically no time.
Yeah.
But yeah, if we're not transferring all that wealth out of the province, yeah, I think Alberta still needs to do the things that they've been talking about, and Danielle Smith's government has been right in kind of the Alberta firewall approach, which has been Alberta Police Force, Alberta taxation, so that the Alberta Tax Authority collects the taxes and passes it on to the federal government, just like Quebec does.
Right.
So there is a level of control there, and a level of leverage, right? And something that Alberta has never, ever, ever had is any kind of leverage. Quebec has all the leverage in the entire union, and good for them. Great job, guys. Way to go.
Yeah.
Isn't that
so?
something?
For a long time, I've agreed with the sentiments of people who are proposing separation. I mean, it really first started when we started talking about, really became a movement in modern times during COVID with the Buffalo Declaration and that sort of thing. And since then, my thoughts on it have really been like, let's be realistic. I just haven't seen it as a realistic option. And at the same time, I've grown up a very, very staunch Canadian. I've believed for most of my life very strongly in Canada. And I've even been guilty in my younger years of being one of those Canadian elitists, thumbing my nose at America. And boy, do I realize how stupid and naive that was. And I'm glad I was in my early 20s and not in my 30s and 40s like I'm seeing now. But after this election, they're making me think about it. They're making me actually think about it. And in thinking about it over the last little while, the one thing that I have come to realize for certain, and this doesn't necessarily lean me more towards supporting any sort of separation, because I think realistically and logistically, it would just be a nightmare no matter what. And I still believe, I still believe that. But ideologically, looking at it ideologically, I've come to realize I have very little in common with people from Central Canada.
Amen.
The average person from Central Canada. I think most Westerners, like all four of us, just shook our heads. Nodded our head.
It's a values.
It depends on the area you're in.
No,
I spent quite a bit of time in Ontario recently,
largely
like
true.
4 years of my life.
For 15 years, I've been going to
Largely
Ottawa,
true, not completely
Toronto, Peterborough, London, North Bay, Sudbury, and it is a different atmosphere. I'm not going to quite say it's a different culture, but in some places it is. In Ottawa, it really is a different culture.
Oh yeah,
and as soon as you cross the border into Quebec, there's no question, it is 100% a different culture. It is like walking into a different country and you don't even have to go very far into Quebec. I've only
And the
really been to Canada.
superiority
Or Northern
complex.
Ontario, right?
Fuck me.
Yeah. And that's the one thing that's really made me question. And I right now, I think that most Westerners, and I do include myself in this right now, I think most Westerners have more in common with Central and Western Americans than we do with Central Canadians.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that
100%.
that is a sad realization that to come to for me. I'm a little bit disturbed by it, but I also think that it is responsible for a lot of what we're experiencing. And so long as Central and Eastern Canada continue to disrespect what Western Canada's values are,
Yeah.
then this sort of, whether I agree with it or not, this sort of sentiment will continue in the West. And I think, unfortunately, it will continue only to get stronger. Now, if we're talking about the logistics of Western separation, Quebec has been threatened it for what? Pretty much since they lost the Battle of the Plains of Abraham. They gathered up all their dead, and then they started causing problems. And especially in recent history, it really ramped up in the 90s and into the early 2000s, and then started to fade after that. But there's been a long-standing threat of Quebec separation that has garnered Quebec a tremendous amount of special consideration.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's anything potentially positive to come out of the sentiment of Western separation, it is the potential to have some of that special consideration go back the other direction. And if that means that there has to be some threat, some organization, or maybe even a referendum that comes down to 49 to 51, if that's what it takes to garner some more respect from the center to the West, which I think is very overdue and very strongly deserved, I think that sentiment will continue. Now, Roman saying, I can't believe what I'm hearing. One stupid election and you're done. So, no, I'm still not done. I'm not on board with Western separation. I'm not. I'm starting to understand the value politically in that sort of movement. I think
this is far more than one stupid election. This is
and that's also
decades of this shit.
Yeah, that's true. And even so, I'm still not a separatist.
What I've wrestled with for a long time is that well, I said it earlier, that people pay attention during election time. A lot of people, and I'm not saying everybody, but a lot of people don't pay attention to what's going on between elections. The treatment of different sections of the country, shit like that the representation of the entire country, it is very Central Canada centric, right?
And it's been that way by design since Mackenzie.
100%. 100%. This is not McDonald. One election. Yes, very much so. It is. This has been ongoing at least since Pierre Senior, Trudeau Senior, has been around.
Oh, it was nearly 100 years before that, Kurt.
No, but I mean, in recent memory, for a lot of us, Trudeau Senior giving the finger to Western Canada. Fuck you guys, you're just a milk cow. Okay, this has been brewing for a long time. Understand that. That is not just pissing and moaning over this last election. This has been brewing for a very long time. And how much longer do we tolerate this shit? right?
The Western provinces
it's
has
a
always
boiling
been
point.
seen- the Western provinces have always been a historically has been historically viewed by the power center in the Laurentian East as
An essential nuisance.
yeah, exactly. They've been Alberta,
Yes.
Saskatchewan, Manitoba have been, and even BC have been resource sectors that they could
Mhm.
extract and generate wealth from, right? And when the serfs all of a sudden want to have a voice, it's like, I don't know, boys. Know your place. Know your place.
Yeah.
Well, it's the same thing.
exactly.
McDonald
Stay in the
refused.
kitchen.
Yeah, or not McDonald. It was McDonald refused to institute an interprovincial police force because he just didn't want to waste the resources.
Right.
Well, then some people get killed. Some wolvers who may or may not have been American shoot a bunch of
Acceptable
First
losses.
Nations people down in the Cypress Hills, and a big hullabaloo happens. Well, we can't have a hullabaloo. There's a lot of land there, and we want that land. So let's institute the Northwest Manitoba Police. Well, then the Northwest Manitoba Police are along for a little while. Well, then they started acting a little bit too much like their own police force. So let's fold them into the RCMP, and here's your carrot. Here's your carrot. The RCMP can be centered in Saskatchewan. But which is a pretty small consolation when you really think about it.
It's really just so that they have a closer view on you.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. and so I'll reiterate once again, I actually am not in favor right now in separation. What I am in favor of is the provinces starting to stick up for themselves. I very much, I actually disagree with Danielle Smith about a lot of things, but when it comes to her flexing the sovereignty of Alberta, I absolutely agree with that. And Scott Moe is taking the, well, let's go along to get along, guys, kind of approach. But it's more than Wab Canoe is doing, so I'm good with that.
Okay.
So
punishable speech. You mean that?
Yeah. Well, he's the
you
premier
saw
of
that
Manitoba
last
now.
week.
Yeah, I did.
Are we getting into thought crimes territory here?
Yes.
Yeah, he is.
Yes,
yeah,
we
he's
are.
okay with that. Yeah.
Yep.
But so I mean, I'm very comfortable with the provinces enforcing their constitutionary autonomy that they've supposed to have had all along. I can't shake. I was talking to a political history professor a number of years ago now, and I made the comment. I said, I think part of the real problem here is that in America, the states have so much more autonomy than the provinces do, like constitutionally. And he looked at me and he said, well, now we've got a problem. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he goes, well, you just told me that you don't know anything about the Canadian Constitution or Canadian history. I was like, what the fuck are you talking about, bro? and he began to school me on how constitutionally the provinces are supposed to in ink have more more autonomy, ability to act autonomously.
You have said the very same thing to me,
than
Chris,
American
and
states.
I still cannot believe that. There is no
Well, and
evidence that I can.
And that's
see.
what Danielle Smith is trying to bring back. She's trying to use
That's
the
right.
words in the Constitution.
100%.
That's
to, like,
right.
These are
And
within
that's
their
why
purview.
I with it. And you know what's funny? The
Right.
latest thing that I've read that has reinforced this for me. Are you guys familiar with the Dorchester Review?
Yeah.
It's a political history journal in Canada. And Gary Mauser is in the process of releasing a 3-part series on how Canadians lost the right to bear arms. And he starts out with how we had an unwritten version of the British Bill of Rights, which in 2 separate sections instills the right to own and bear arms, and how he details very well, I think, the over how over 100 years, more than 100 years, well, I guess we're over 150 years now, how over this period of time, the prevalence of liberal governance in Canada has eroded that. And it started with Mackenzie, our first liberal prime minister. And it started with him centralizing or setting the foundation for the centralization of power within central Canada. And so a lot of
You mean Lower Canada?
lower Canada. Yeah, you're absolutely right about that, actually. When we talked about, MacDonald organized a large portion of the Confederation, and he was the bro when in 1867. But remember, he had 2 terms. In between him was Mackenzie, and after him for a significant amount of time, pretty much for the rest of the history of Canada, has been primarily liberal governments.
Right.
And it's been that continual centralization of power. And sure, according to our Constitution, you can do all these things. Wait till you ask me for money again. And that has become the story. And successively throughout our history, provinces just became used to that. Okay, well, I guess constitutionally on paper we can do this, but but paper doesn't matter. What matters is what happens practically. And what happens practically is if you flex your constitutional rights, you don't get any money.
Yep. Every time practicality wins.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's a dangerous game that Smith is playing. But for God's sake, I'm glad she's playing it.
Nobody else is.
It has to be done. Yeah. Exactly. Nobody else is.
Well, and that's what irritates me a little bit about Scott Moe.
That's what makes her a target.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Big time.
This is what irritates me a little bit about Scott Moe, because 2 provinces on a united front are much stronger. Yeah. And Moe is very happy sitting in the background, wanting the same things as Smith, following a lot of the same sort of legislative passes and all that sort of stuff.
Right.
But he's very happy just sitting in the back seat, letting Danielle Smith up and speak for him. And I wish he would grow a pair and stand beside her instead of standing behind her.
Well, I have it on good authority, someone who knows him personally. He is very tired.
Then fuck off.
Not a
let someone take over.
But it is not a good thing for a provincial premier, right?
No.
So what do you do with that? He has a sense of duty, but very tired of fighting that eternal fucking fight that we have. So he is a coattails guy. He rides on the coattails of Danielle Smith because she is motivated, she is strong, she goes.
She's also fresh.
She is fresh.
Say again, Van.
So she's fresh.
Yes. 100%. And so instead of driving the bus himself, he rides in the second seat.
Hey, somebody's got to ride shotgun. That's fine.
That's right.
I'm okay. Go ahead, ride shotgun. Just don't sit in the back of the bus.
He's just fucking. He's out. He's sacked out. Is what he is. Honestly,
he's sacked out already.
Now, given that, the fact that he's still in power after all these fucking years, what does that say about what else is an option for representation in Saskatchewan?
Well, and that's a big problem. Is the only other option was Carla Beck.
Very big problem.
Yeah.
So we would take
my problem is I've spent too much
liner
time listening to
over
her
the fucking options.
Yeah.
The tired.
I think we solved it, boys.
Guy.
Did we solve it?
Yeah.
Scott Moe needs
I'm
to
gonna run
up.
for premier. Fuck you guys.
You know, it could be like Conor McGregor running for president of Ireland.
Y'all are cocksuckers.
Basically.
or BJ Penn running for governor of Hawaii.
Yeah.
Actually, that's not a bad idea.
BJ Penn did run for governor of Hawaii,
Did he?
and he failed
No
miserably.
kidding, I didn't. Oh shit!
In fact,
Well,
he was fined.
he's a good
because
little fighter.
He was such a dick about it afterwards that he left all of his posters and stuff up in Hilo. He didn't take them down after the election. I was there in 2021, and I'm seeing all these BJ Penn for governor signs, and I'm like, when is their governor election? And they're like, it was last year.
That just tells me he should have been a dick during his fucking campaign, not after.
I think that's the problem. I think he was, which is why he isn't the governor of Hawaii.
See, this is the problem with appealing to a certain group of people that that just don't understand where you're coming from. Like, just be a dick, paint it black and white. This is the reality of things. You're a fucking idiot if you don't see it, and I guess this is why I'm not a politician.
Rooster for
That should be your campaign slogan.
Yeah, you're a dick if you don't see it.
I don't give a fuck what you think you believe. This is the reality.
Yeah.
Take a bite of the shit sandwich.
I'll be taking questions from the media. Shut the fuck up. Next. Shut the fuck up. Next.
You're a fucking moron.
I'll be your speechwriter.
Yeah.
You can't even say, I'm sorry, that's a stupid question. I'm not going to answer it. that's too polite.
Oh yeah, you can.
All right.
You're an idiot.
I think we've solved the world's problems. People, if you're still paying attention to us at this point, God love you. Give us a like, give us a thumbs up, give us all the things. Let's take a bit of a measured approach over the next 12 to 18 months. Let's see how all this shit shakes out. We didn't even talk about Natalie Provost. Should we do that very quick? Does anybody have any predictions?
She's going to try to push the agenda.
I 100% shoot. That's a guarantee. She will try to use the position to push her agenda. She's a special interest MP, 100%. My hope is that she will go too far, like she always does, further than the Liberals want to go, and she will say something bad, just like she has under Polly, and she will get herself in hot water, and she'll be relegated to the backbench, and she will get nothing done. That's my hope.
That might be logical.
It's possible. Wow. I think it's equally as possible. I hope that people pay attention to her and scrutinize her very carefully, meaning the freedom of information folks, because I think it is equally possible that she, in her special interest actions, does something unparliamentary in her actions with Police Souvien or some other organizing other anti-gun groups, which would be, and I think it's possible that she could break some parliamentary rules. I hope.
It's plausible.
And it would be amazing for her to lose her seat and be kicked out of the party in her first run at the can. I think I don't care what the reality is. That I'm holding out hope for those two things right now. What do you think, Van?
Yep.
Yes. So as per Carly's comment, I mean, Polly and a couple other anti-gun groups have already started their campaign against firearms, whatever is left legal in Canada. Now they're going after bolt action rifles, like the one they pictured in, I think it was a Cadex rifle. This was like yesterday or 2 days ago. And I'm like, here we go. It has already begun. Now, I will say, I don't think she's going to go anywhere. Even if she says something immensely stupid and irresponsible, whatever scandal she has, she's going to remain there. She's been part of the Liberal machine for a long time. This is really just a formalization of her role.
Fair.
If you look at somebody like Stephen Guillebeau, that guy is a complete and utter. I don't know. I don't want to get.
I'm glad we're not talking about Guillebeau. Yeah, we'll be here for another hour.
But this guy has done a lot of stupid shit, and he still remains in cabinet. So I don't know. I think there's a lot. I think the margin for error is very large for her. whether anything that she proposes is actually going to go through or be taken seriously, I doubt that very much inside the first year. I think Carney is going to work really hard to prove that he's a reasonable adult in the room who's trying to steer the country in the right direction through a tough period. Like I said, the biggest crisis in the history of Canada that he has to navigate through, and there are going to be priorities that he has to go and tackle first. And guns are not going to be one of them. I don't think.
I agree with that.
I
Actually,
hope you're right.
I don't think
Yeah.
they're going to be
Yeah.
one of them, even though he said that they're going to continue with the buyback very quickly and very immediately. I think he's a little bit smarter about the logistics of that. I think he's
Justin
going to.
Trudeau bought hard into the whole anti-gun thing. I don't
Yeah.
think Carney gives a shit.
Yeah, I agree with that. I also think that because of that, the gun thing stopped becoming just in the last year, stopped becoming as big of a old faithful kind of channel changer for the Liberals. I think the Conservatives did a
little
very
bit
good job of
surprised at
taking
that.
that away from them. Yeah.
Yeah, it
And-
wasn't
and-
quite the sound bit generator that they had hoped to, the one of the levers that they pull or the buttons that they push to be, hey, we need a boost in numbers, do this.
Well,
Well, you can only
actually
pull the lever
banning
so many times.
Yeah.
fair,
There's nothing
but I don't even think that was it. I think it was actually banning like engraved single shot rifles and bolt actions and pump actions and all and like actual tools, hunting tools
And cannons.
and yeah, exactly. I think that was what gave the Conservatives the ammunition to help the uninformed public to see that this is a bridge too far and it's ideological. And now they just keep on, well, this is Grandpa Joe's guns. This is Grandpa Joe's guns. And they actually got traction with that. And I hope that Carney is separated enough from the ideology of that he's just going to say, look, Natalie, like this isn't worth the political football. You know what I mean?
Natalie,
Yeah,
look
and I
inside
think there's
yourself.
political capital to be spent elsewhere.
Yeah.
Especially in a minority government and a slim minority at most, but at best. But the thing that I will say to that comment that you guys just put up, that no, we're not safe, 100% not. I think we have a reprieve.
No.
I think we have a reprieve,
yeah.
between up to a year, maybe max.
And by the way, I think that's going to continue for the remainder of our lifetimes.
It is.
We're not going to gain even in the United States where they have Second Amendment, there are a vast number of states where they're constantly looking over their shoulders. Just get used to it. This is life as a gun owner. You're constantly going to be looking over your shoulder. You are accepting a level of instability in your life by being a gun owner. This is what we've signed up for. And it's not a reason to quit. And it's not a reason to turn into a grumpy old man. And Kurt, you have plenty of other reasons to be a grumpy old man.
God damn it.
But I think it's important that we remind ourselves of that.
Of a bitch.
I think it's important that we remind ourselves of that once in a while because it's very easy to forget.
So, I mean, ultimately, I think Natalie's going to be a junior MP backbencher.
Yeah.
If she's given any kind of cabinet or committee role, I would be concerned. That would be the point where I would start getting concerned.
Yeah. Wouldn't it be great though if
and
she
that's
got
not
caught?
out of the realm of possibility,
It's not,
to be honest.
Yeah.
No.
Wouldn't it be great though if she got caught in some sort of advocacy role with Polly Sasuya that's unparliamentary, I just think that would be great.
My grandfather used to say, apparently, if wishes were horses, then beggars could fly or could ride.
If my mother had wheels, she'd be a bike.
Yeah, right. So, wishes are one thing. We've seen for the past 10 years a lot of the shit. Chris, you and I have spoken about the devious mind versus the intelligent mind, right?
Yeah.
Anything regular people can conceive. No, they wouldn't do that, or this is not possible, or what, anything like that.
Fuck. That's a whole other conversation.
Oh, I know. But it seems like that shit comes out of that fucking party relentlessly.
Just like
Do not
concept,
dismiss.
yeah, do not dismiss what they can come up with. Just like the concept of taxing your
Yes.
home equity.
Yeah.
Oh Jesus,
Yeah.
Guys, that is a very, very likely scenario of something that they tried to do 3 years ago or 2 years ago,
Yes, sir.
and it was
Yeah,
part of
you're
the
right.
platform again.
Yeah, it was.
Yep.
Okay, well, we're 2 hours and 20 minutes in. I just want to clear something up for everybody before we finish off here. Tommy Douglas was a federal MP in the province of Saskatchewan for the CCF in Weyburn in 1935 to 1940. However, he was not the leader of the CCF ever. He was only ever the leader of the New Democratic Party starting in 1962, and he lost. He ran in Regina, but lost. So he was not an MP in Saskatchewan as the leader of the NDP. However, there was a by-election in '62, and he won in Burnaby, Coquitlam. And after that, while he was the leader of the New Democratic Party, he was only ever an MP in the province of British Columbia.
Now, Carly's yelling at me from the other room. It's like, you said the leader of a national party that was from Saskatchewan.
No. Who was an MP in Saskatchewan?
Oh, okay.
You tell Carly I apologize if I misspoke, but I didn't misspeak.
Penance. I want to see penance.
All right, Vanya, because you're here and you weren't talking about your company, plug Apex real quick so everybody knows how to get them, and we'll call an end to the night.
Oh yeah, I guess I didn't even prepare anything for that, but I mean, Apex Optics, we're based out of Calgary. If you haven't heard of us yet, go check us out on apexoptics.co or .ca. Redirects to the same site. We kind of our whole mantra is, for shooters by shooters. The entire company was born out of the need to create optics that are, high grade, premium quality optics for the shooter that, didn't have a premium price tag necessarily, but we're innovating on stuff all the time. We're making new things. I'm constantly working on new projects with our engineers, and we've got some pretty cool stuff that we're going to be announcing in the next 6 months to a year. And just kind of stay tuned for that. But in the meantime, we have a new shipment of Rivals coming in. The Rival X's, some Hunters coming in as well from Japan, and as well as our new shipment of binos that are en route. So we're going to be fully stocked up here for the season.
And pick up where Carly started here.
Oh yeah, and our match, the Apex Rocky Mountain Challenge, is in July 12th, 13th, or 12th, 14th, whatever, if you include the Friday. This year, it's a PRS Pro Series qualifier, meaning that if you want to qualify for the finale, the PRS finale that's in Pennsylvania this year, at the War Geisley range, you have to shoot at least one qualifier somewhere in the PRS regions. So we're the qualifier for Canada right now, or for the Canadian Prairie region, which is called Foothills. But as part of the Pro Series, it doesn't really belong to the region, but they kind of try to place at least one qualifier in every region. So it's going to be awesome. We're going to return to more or less the same location than we were last year. It might be slightly different. I'm actually visiting next week with a new rancher in the area, but it'll either be in the same spot or just south of there, or in a location just west of there. But we're kind of in the same area within 5-10 minutes. Lots of new props this year. Everything is going to be super solid. We're proofing the course of fire like 2 weeks ahead of time. We're setting up match a lot earlier than we did this year or this past year. And yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. Similar course of fire. I'm going to change a couple of things, make sure that there's a lot of opportunity for even the kind of the new and novice shooters who are shooting their first PRS match. Even if it's your first one, you're going to have a really good chance of being successful and having a great time. Last year's match was a little bit more difficult than we wanted it to be, just because of some of the conditions. But yeah, I just shot the Nut Crusher match in Utah, and oh man, it stands up to the name. So if anybody ever complained,
Nut Crusher,
the Apex Rocky Mountain Challenge was too difficult, I go and challenge you to shoot the Nut Crusher match that's called the Alpha Munitions Nut Crusher.
Do you have to punch yourself in the crotch before you take every shot, or?
it basically feels like, what the hell am I doing with my life the entire weekend? So
that's hilarious.
Yeah,
That's hilarious.
so
You have to go
Also,
kiss
it's
the
the hardest
wobbly
match in the
wheelbarrow.
world. It's the hardest match in the world by all accounts. So much so that international shooters from Norway, Germany, Italy, France came over, and then Australia, New Zealand to shoot the match because they've heard it was the hardest. So yeah, it was
Wow.
crazy.
Cool.
So
We don't like to talk about international students in Canada. Thanks.
Yeah.
Also, don't forget that ballistically speaking, will be at the Apex Rocky Mountain Challenge. So
Absolutely.
come and say hi and
Some
et
of
cetera,
us.
and et cetera. Quick question from you: does Apex distribute in the U.S.?
Yeah, absolutely. We sell directly into the U.S. through our website. So if you're in the States, we ship all of our stuff, all of our orders. If they're in stock, they ship from our U.S. warehouse in Texas. Soon it might be in Montana. We'll see. But we're going to be in Texas for the time being. Yeah, everything ships out of the States, and if it's out of stock in the U.S. warehouse, we'll cross ship it, but you don't pay any duties or taxes or anything like that. We cover all that as part of our whole deal. But yeah, no, that's we sell internationally as well, all across the world now. So Europe, South Africa, New Zealand, Australia, Kazakhstan, and
Worldwide.
France and Germany and Norway and all over the place now. So we're growing all over the place, which is awesome. It's just more logistical challenges to solve all the time, but it's been a fun ride so far.
Sweet.
How does this
Well, we
happen,
don't-
Chris?
What's that? Maybe
How
one
does
of
this
these days
happen?
I will get a
Carly?
BS podcast sticker. I actually
Carly says,
I have Carly's stickers. They are right here.
Oh. Nice.
I can't.
You should just bring him to the match.
I will.
Yes.
I'll do that. Okay. Well, in other news, working the YouTube grind plays less than a solar farm in a blizzard. If you want to support the channel directly, head over to storydknives.com or cdnprecision.com if you're out east, and you can pick up yourself a gardener knife. We think this is one of the best survival type / everyday fixed blade knives available for a very reasonable cost. We're pretty proud of this little guy, and it is called the Gardener because of its multi-use abilities. The concept here is it's better to be a gardener in a war than a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. Anyway, please go have a look at a great knife. We're confident it'll be on your side for a lifetime. As usual, if you guys would like to check out the show, facebook.com/BS podcast. You can leave us a review. Let us know how we're doing. You can email us at info@bspodcast.ca. You can go to our website for old episodes and other content at bspodcast.ca. You can find us on the YouTubes at /@BS_podcast. And as always, a massive thank you to all of our sponsors and all of our listeners. Without you, we wouldn't have a show in the first place. It has nothing to do with yous. We're talking about Shane and Steve, Miles, Carrie and Cappy, Duncan and Rob, Phil, Doug and Nisa, Vanya and Carly, Oscar and JR. Thank you all an immeasurable amount. Thank you to all of our listeners. We've got some great guests coming up in the next couple of weeks, primarily set up by Mike and Derek because they're so much better than me and Kurt in every way, shape, and form. So make sure you guys set your calendars, set a date on your, put it on your freaking calendars.
Let's just work past this. Yeah,
put it on your calendars and we'll tune in next Friday when we will answer the question, what is the answer to life? It is not 42.
Shit.
Maybe it's 43.
Boom.
All right. See everybody next week.
But some of these bullets, as you saw, have an incendiary device on the tip of it, which is a heat-seeking device.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it.
Welcome to your weekly dose of BS, the Ballistically Speaking podcast.